Hey everyone, today we're discussing some of the worst perks from Dead by Daylight history. Shadowborn used to give quite a strange downside. It currently gives an extra 15 degrees to your FOV. Prior to 1.8.3 in its original 1.0.0 state, it gave you the same 15 degrees extra FOV, but also applied some odd debuffs. Your vision was 20% clearer. I assume this meant that your screen became 20% brighter, because Lightborn did the opposite and darkened your screen by 20% back in 1.0.0. The big downside of this perk version was that you would get blinded 50% faster, and would receive a huge 75% extra duration to recover from flashlight blinds. A pretty horrendous downside if you ask me. That was very early days for the game though. Ace in the Hole is more a case of the perk just being a bit pathetic. It's not exactly an amazing perk currently, but it is certainly a lot better than it was. In its original release date, it simply gave the chance, not even a guarantee, to give you an add-on when you searched a chest. That's all it did, and the odds of the add-on were restricted to uncommon to very rare. In 2.1.0 this was buffed to a 100% chance, and the 50% chance being moved on to a second add-on, which would be exclusively uncommon. Finally, 3.6.0 gave it the effect of allowing you to keep add-ons you retrieved whilst using this perk, if you managed to escape. So yeah, a really rough start for Ace in the Hole. And rising to what is now not even that good still. Blood Pact upon release was shockingly bad. Again, not exactly a standout perk nowadays, but it used to be even worse. Original Blood Pact gave the same effect as it does currently of a 7% boost to movement speed after healing or being healed by the obsession. However, instead of remaining indefinitely, as long as you keep within 16 meters of them, it simply lasted just 10 seconds. Then that was it, you got nothing else. Blood Pact also deactivates if you're the obsession, narrowing its usage even further. Basically a rare chance to receive a 10-second boost to movement speed, likely at a time when you are safe from the killer anyway. Dark Sense gave the odd endgame ability of revealing the killer's aura for 7 seconds once the exit gates had been powered. This might not sound too terrible, but really it's not giving you that much of an advantage. 7 seconds may not even be long enough to gain any useful information, and there's a good chance you have eyes on them anyway in some form. They're gonna be going to one of two gates, so I'm not sure. This seems pretty terrible to me. This was later buffed in a multitude of ways, changing it throughout the years, instead revealing the killer's aura after generator completion, which I think is a perfectly fine ability. Déjà Vu did a similar thing, but the reverse, revealing 2 generators at the start of the trial for 8 seconds. Basically a Lethal Pursuer type effect, but for generators. 2 random generators shown to you for just 8 seconds at the start of the trial. Truly quite bad, particularly compared to its current usage as an anti-3-gen perk. Technician has always been known as a pretty bad perk, with its main usage being for newer players who are learning how to do skill checks. It currently completely removes the noise made from failed skill checks, but punishes you with a significant penalty. It also reduces the range in which the generator can be heard by 8 meters. Back in 1.5.1 though, it kept the 8 meter reduction, but got a reduced 50% chance to stop a generator from exploding. It's honestly just kind of odd how so many of these earlier perks tend to do things to some level of success, like Old Calm Spirit only stopping crows 95% of the time. I think this made it debatably one of the worst perks at the time, with it not even really fulfilling the role of aiding newer players. Having this percentage chance on so many of these perks is just so bizarre, I think. Like, there's already so much RNG in the game, but back then there was even more RNG even in your perks a lot of the time. So I'm really glad they've decided to remove most of those. No One Left Behind is a perk. Back in 1.0.0, this perk was much worse, fairly similar to its current state, just with a much lower percentage increase to healing and unhooking at just 15% compared to the current 50%. However, it received an odd amount of nerfs and changes despite it already being very niche. In 1.0.2, it received a 3% reduction to its action speed bonus to healing and unhooking. Bear in mind, this perk is only active when the exit gates are powered. In 3.4.0, it was altered to not activate when the gates were powered, but instead when a gate had been opened. It did receive a bonus of revealing all survivor auras when this happened, but I mean, when an exit gate has been opened is quite a big nerf to an already niche perk. With survivors often choosing to 99% gates, this makes this perk quite trivial, and might gain you a few seconds in most games where it even takes action. In fact, it might even be a detriment in most games, with it encouraging you to open the gate sooner to get the buffs, and potentially leading to deaths by the endgame collapse or possible activations of perks like Blood Warden. Bizarre change in my opinion, and I'm really glad they kinda reverted it back. Open-handed and Plunderer's Instinct I wanted to roll together somewhat. These two are kind of another product of their time kind of thing. They both have quite pitiful effects by today's standards. Open-handed currently provides greatly extended aura reading for your whole team. It acts as a blanket buff. Even with just one person running it, it extends all auras by 16 meters, making it actually quite strong with perks like Kindred, for example. The original 1.3.1 version, however, simply gave an 8 meter extension to reading range, and only applied to you, which, let's be honest, is pretty terrible. The original version, unlike the 1.5.2 version when it got buffed, also couldn't be stacked in any form, which the later version did implement. Plunderer's Instinct in its 1.0.0 state was simply a chest locator tool, revealing chest auras in a 64 meter range. The big drawback though really, and the main draw of the perk in my opinion, is the additional chest odds or luck, which you didn't get with the original version. With most people knowing or being able to stumble across the path of a chest, this perk seems especially bad. It kind of feels like it has a trivial effect and would be a bit like revealing locker auras. It doesn't seem like there's much use for that, especially at such a long range. Chests in general are typically huge time sinks too, which doesn't help its case. Surveillance is meant to be a surveillance perk. It does this currently by letting you monitor gens you've kicked, seeing an aura change if they're touched. It also gives you a longer range for generator noise, extending it by 8 meters. Back in 1.9.0 though, the effect was entirely different, instead providing a highlighted aura for 16 seconds after kicking a generator. This is a really short time to be honest. You first have to apply the regression, then leave the area, and by then you're getting maybe 8 or so seconds of actually monitoring the generator before the perk goes away. It really seems quite pitiful, especially compared to the current effects. Gearhead has had a rough time through the years, and has basically never been good. Its original release date, it had the activation requirement of 2 basic attacks. It would then last 30 seconds and highlight generators in yellow if they were being worked on, but only after a survivor hit a good skill check. This made it very inconsistent, and debatably the worst generator monitoring perk in the game. In its 5.5.0 rework, it altered to activate whenever a survivor lost a health state. It activated for 10 seconds and would reveal survivor auras whenever they hit a great skill check. This trivialized it a lot, having such a narrow activation window, but also now just highlighting the survivor. I believe it did work on heals too though. Regardless, still really weird perk, especially as it only activated on great skill checks. Like, that's a really bad activation requirement. It was then reworked again to its current state, where it's a combination of the 2 versions, but it's still pretty terrible, mainly due to the skill check hit requirement and the short activation window. Predator is a really sad one to be honest, with it once being a pretty good perk. Its 1.0.0 version had the fairly solid effect of keeping scratch marks visible for 3 seconds longer. I think that's actually very nice, particularly if a survivor makes a lot of distance. Current day Blight, with that like potential catch up, it could be very strong. It's a reverse lightweight effect. However, in 2.1.0, it was reworked to make scratch marks instead spawn closer together. This often works against you and makes them actually more difficult to follow and use for tracking, due to them displaying differently. Both versions are pretty but the newer, much more broken version is definitely worse, I think. I do want to give an honourable mention to We're Gonna Live Forever in its original state, as it, I believe, was the only perk in the game that didn't do anything. It simply gave you extra blood points, but in terms of gameplay strength, it did literally nothing. Debatable though on that one. Alright, well, that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed. Thanks, and goodbye.